Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Vivid Earth. I've got a very special guest tonight, or this morning, wherever you are. Laura Eisenhower. She's the great-granddaughter of President Dwight Eisenhower from the US. She's a researcher, an author, an astrologer, internationally acclaimed speaker, and has presented her work worldwide. I started listening to her probably about 4 years ago, and I was just blown away by the information. We all sort of wake up in stages, and she was a big part of my awakening at kind of the galactic level, shall I say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm so happy to finally have her on. So she reveals exopolitical information about the great-grandfather Dwight Eisenhower's administration that's been largely held in secrecy. And she's considered to be one of North America's leading researchers and experts on health, exopolitics, alchemy, metaphysics, astrology, and galactic history. And Laura works fearlessly to free us from the 3D holographic time loop.
Welcome to today's interview.
Oops. False Archonic systems and military-industrial complex. But I'll let her introduce herself to you and just a little bit of an update. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much, Anina. It's really wonderful to be here with you. And yeah, so after you shared that intro, I mean, that pretty much is it. I really focus a lot on what the astrological alignments are, because we notice in the world that the astrological alignments are playing out in a very inverted way, and they sort of leverage the planetary alignments and the different sort of events that go on that level, which really helps us to, understand what's currently going on a cosmic level and how that impacts us personally. So when we look at the storylines, when we look at what's going on in the world, we tend to get an inverted or more shadow side of its expression. And that's really how they leverage the occult and this sort of information that you don't really hear about unless you seek it. I mean, obviously everybody knows about astrology, but they more hear it as a pseudoscience, or it's just to, maybe look at a horoscope or predict things, find out, who is relationship compatible. But we don't realize how much it relates to our health, to timelines, to manipulation of planetary energies, to our own DNA, and how the knowledge of astrology and the planetary energies being manipulated with things like geoengineering and reversal grid technology actually is an important thing to look at, particularly in these times. So I just wanted to add that's a big part of my focus and how I navigate.
Something that I've been dying to ask someone who's very, skilled in astrology is, there's obviously the Western astrology, and then there's Vedic astrology. And a lot of people saying Vedic astrology is actually closer to where the planets are supposed to be. Maybe I'm not saying it correctly, but, we all know there's supposed to be 13 astrological signs, not 12. Some things have been hidden from us, and then the Vedic astrology differs from the Western. So if you look at planetary alignments and things like solar eclipses and, the solar eclipse that we had in April, what does that say for example, what would your commentary be on that kind of statement?
So I'm not familiar with Vedic or sidereal astrology incorporating the 13th sign of Fiacus. I've stuck with Western. I do whole sign. I also do Placidus. And I understand a lot about the 13th sign. I write a lot about it. I talk a lot about it. So it's something to include between the signs of Scorpio and Sagittarius. But what was your question, though, did you say about eclipses?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, when we look at Western astrology, is that really truly the alignment in the sky in terms of planetary alignments? Or, I know Vedic astrology is different. So, for example, in April, well, the fact that if it was a natural eclipse or not is debatable, but people were saying, no, we're actually in Pisces, and others were saying, no, we're actually in Aries, and which one is it? And, because
I think both are important. Yeah, I think both are important. I have my comfort level in the Western. I've just been using it for so long. And looking at my Western chart, I'm totally a Libra. I mean, my whole life I've been about sacred union and relationships. I'm very influenced by relationships. I'm definitely ruled by Libra energy. And in Vedic, I am Virgo. And I can see, okay, I'm all about health and healing and herbs and Mother Earth and nature. And so I just see it as different levels of our being. Where Western would be more about, I think, this particular human experience. The Placidus is based in geographical location as far as how big the houses are. When you look at whole sign, it's a lot different. It's a more ancient way to go about it. I just, some of the interpretations of the Vedic, I think it's really important to learn, and I've delved into it, but I think it's really good for people to have both and to get a reading from both. Right now with the eclipses, the nodal axis has been South Node Libra, North Node Aries, and Aries has had Chiron in that sign. And so the North Node and how eclipses are in connection with the North and South Node really represent a massive growth period. That's why there's so much attention around eclipse time and the possibilities of certain events taking place or the manipulation of these energies. And it's a lot is just to kind of yank us in, because dark weaponry and leveraging the planetary alignments is to sort of capture our attention into a storyline that these aspects can represent, but there's different levels and octaves to these planetary energies. So the lower octave of like North Node Aries with the Chiron being the wounded healer would be, okay, so the North Node, what are we stepping into? What are we here to integrate as a growth period for humanity? Reflecting upon the South Node, which is Libra, looking at our partnerships and relationships. As we step into more of our power and our capacity to stand our ground instead of just do what other people want us to do and people please and just be all about others, and relationships at the expense sometimes of ourselves to the point where it can create imbalance. What do we need to do to stand strong in ourselves, in our own personal sense of leadership, and then reflect on relationships? Do they allow us to be ourselves? Can we be in harmony with others? And so a lot of people are losing friends and partners because they're not on the same page. They're making different decisions. They're not viewing this world in the same kind of way. So when we look at the Chiron aspects, it's the wounded ego. You know, are you allowing yourself to be injured by these dark agendas? Are you consenting to things that ultimately are hurting you, right? So that's Mars, willpower, Chiron, wounds. So the higher octave would be, where have we been wounded? Where can we take a step in that warrior energy and begin to lead by example and connect with different tools and modalities that help us to heal? Where can we be transparent about maybe the programmings that we've adopted that haven't been true to who we really are? You know, because it's the wounded healer, we need to heal. And the lower octave of the Mars energy with the Chiron would be hurt people, hurt others, divide and conquer, competition, being warlike, which is acting out wounds instead of being transparent. So it really does feel like that's what we're dealing with. So even if that does come later, you know, the whole deal is that Vedic or Western, these aspects are close enough to each other to already begin to feel them. And so the North Node is going to go into Pisces and the South Node will be Virgo. We're going to be reflecting upon the physical body, spirit, body, communication. Neptune has more to do with the multidimensional, the creative imagination, and the unconscious, and shining light on the unconscious so that we're not in autopilot, just enabling agendas or programs to stream through us, because Neptune is vast, and that's where we dream and create visions that we want to anchor and ground into the Virgo physical energy to manifest. So everything on a soul level is about integration and polarity. That's the great growth period for all of us. So as we step into the Pisces and the eclipses activate them, we're going to be looking at our creative imagination. Is it infected with propaganda, with false narratives, with, you know, everything we see in the news, to the point where we like allow our creative channels to begin to integrate that into our physical, to the point of physical illness and manifesting a future we don't want? So can we clear that out so that we're directly connected to our dreams and visions? So, you know, to me, having enough of an awareness of the planetary alignments and knowing, okay, the Western system is my comfort level because that's just what I grew up learning. And I'm totally like not discounting Vedic at all. So I usually like to sit on panels with people that are, you know, do the Vedic and I do my Western, and we just kind of connect the dots and understand the origins or why they're different and this and that. I wouldn't be an expert right now to like completely like nail it as far as like, all right, this is how they're totally different. But To a certain degree, yeah, sidereal, and the way they interpret the nodes is very different. I tend to look at the nodes like a growth period, the energy signature we're born with, right, in our personal charts. So on a collective level, the energy signature that we're reflecting upon. Okay, when it comes to relationships, next, when it comes to our physical health, these are things that are really lighting up. Look at the indoctrination in schools, gender confusion. So when we're reflecting on the Libra energy, and we're moving into the Aries, there's a Chiron wound, wounded identity, creating confusion, which eventually will hurt those children because they'll be like, wow, my mom let me get a sex change, or society did, and I didn't even have to ask my parents, and I was only 11 years old. Why did they let me do that? I mean, I was a tomboy. If I compromised my natural flow into being a woman, just because I like to play with Tonka trucks and climb trees, I would be very wounded and very upset, right? So I'm not saying that there isn't a legitimacy to some people doing that, but do it later in life and don't push it on the children. So what we're seeing in the school systems is getting way worse as far as indoctrination, way more leveraging wounds that are unconscious to people because we're traumatized. We don't know our galactic history. We're getting rewritten history. The planetary aspects, we're not understanding enough to navigate this journey, and we just get the storylines that invert them into something that is far lesser than what it could be. And then maybe, we'll learn astrology if we go out of our way, but, sort of like, oh, that's a pseudoscience, and that's not something to be taken seriously as a science or something to incorporate into the medical industry. Doing charts for people. My gosh, I'm like, wouldn't it be great if your doctor knew this? They would really get to the point of what the root is behind your illness instead of just give you chemo or just give you drugs, particularly the emotional body. If you're depressed, there's a reason for it. Why mask it? If you're angry, you've got passion. What is it trying to tell you? If we mask these things, if we medicate them in ways that numb them out, versus herbs that help support more balance and more clarity on what those messages are, it's really sad because these are a lot of souls on our planet that are literally masking and blocking their intuition and their higher guidance, that their emotionality and their elementals like fire, is guiding them to recognize. And we need to listen more. So when we look at worldly events, it's very easy to be like, all right, that's what's happening in the world. And it is. People are getting hurt. It's not like it's an illusion, but it is sort of a simulation, meaning that it's engineered. It's not organic to what humans would be able to create if they weren't trying to pit us against each other and influence us into belief systems and picking a party and responding to some sort of historical trauma that's being manipulated through presenting it in a way that might not be the truth of what really happened. So if we're grown-ups and we're reflecting upon a childhood that is false, that has false memories, that is rewritten differently because we can't remember, we're not going to really heal. So to reclaim our history and our galactic history is incredibly important. And also knowing that we're not going to get it 100%. Like I wrote this book, right? I'm getting as close to the truth as I can get, but it's really here to awaken your truth, to have discernment, to take what resonates and leave the rest. Because it is a lot for us to be processing right now. And we need to give ourselves the time and space, or else we're just going to be constantly plugged in to this inverted simulation reality. And we're going to enable it to battery up artificial timelines, which require our power for them to even exist. So these aren't the powers that be. They're the wannabe powers that stole our power to engineer a false timeline that we do not have to participate in anymore.
Yeah, it's incredible how it's all been manipulated. And of course, all of what you've mentioned is not by accident. It's been engineered and artificially inserted upon our planet for, thousands of years ago, not even decades, not even millennia, but thousands of years. So it's a very, very carefully crafted plan, something that many people cannot even fathom. I speak about family members, they think I'm nuts, they just like, but, the government will not do that to you, or you're nuts. Like, what are you talking about? And they don't realize this is a thousands of years plan that have been, these guys are smart and they have advanced technology and they master manipulators. So of course, crafting the perfect plan. And also it's not the first time they've done this either, right? They've conquered and caused the demise of many planets before us. So we kind of now the last stand, they're feeding ground, so to speak. And they're not going to go down without a fight. What are your thoughts currently on where we are in the world in terms of, the alliance that are fighting this. We seem to be nearing the end. Are we really nearing the end? What are your thoughts on where in the fight of this global battle we really are?
Right. And totally, if we learned in school, like third period galactic history class, and we knew that Tiamat exploded, Maldek exploded, what happened to Lemuria and Atlantis, we'd be constantly processing as a humanity how to protect ourselves in the here and now. So the Earth Alliance, the White Hats, and positive branches of the secret space programs, Eisenhower set up in his administration. We don't hear about that. The false narratives of him signing treaties with the Greys was to cover up their tracks, because actually in 1952, an unconditional surrender agreement took place under Truman. And that unconditionally surrendered us to the ICC Nazi Draco Alliance, which also involved treaties with the Greys and the exchange of technology for abductions. So this is something Eisenhower inherited when he stepped into office, also realizing the deeper layers of the Second World War, and all of a sudden realizing, whoa, this military industrial complex, the fact that there's so many levels of top secret above him, that he needed Valiant Thor to help advise him of what was to come and what he was dealing with. And also to help him and inspire him to set up things like the Earth Alliance and the White Hats, which were seeded then and have been, continuing on. Where they are in their operations is hard to say. They can't really disclose all of that because they have to protect themselves. So we hear a lot about, oh, they're clearing out the bases, or they're doing this and that. And there are some representatives, that would be more legitimate to listen to about that than others that have this kind of background. But it's hard to say because I'm in touch with the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance, but he's not going to report to me. He's not going to tell me everything that's going on. I can message him every once in a while and just be like, what's going on? But he's just doing it. And he said, Eisenhower, with the help of Valiant Thor, petitioned the Guardians, and the Guardian presence is here. They put an outer barrier around the planet. And what they're trying to do is corner these dark forces so that they can't escape and no more can infiltrate and come in, so that it's not going to get worse. It's sort of, like when we shield ourselves and our immune system and we support it, right? And our higher self is like, we're no longer, got auric leaks. Things aren't coming in as much as they were. So to me, it's a part of the ascension. But on a ground level, for it to manifest, there has to be those that are in agreement to it, to be the conduits of it, because we can be the gatekeepers of our own ascension, because we're being influenced by gatekeepers that want to limit us and talk us out of our greater abilities and lead us to believe that we're lesser than, and we need to rely on something outside of us to guide us, to lead us. And even, on a galactic level, there's ETs that want to do that as well. They want to convince us that we need them. But that's the problem reaction solution. And there's a lot of false channelings and so-called benevolent looking ETs that we got to be very wary of. They can assist us, they can help us, but they're not going to save us. We need to learn how to switch on dormant DNA and recognize those ET genetics, and that our higher self and the higher dimensions of ourself are a part of them and are connected with them in our galactic history, in our galactic heritage, and in who we truly are. And lifetimes that we've had, we might be in this physical vessel that holds this density, but as we switch these dormant levels on, we're going to be able to perceive them more as allies and friends instead of saviors or the enemy that's trying to destroy us. And yes, those things are happening, but is the enemy that's trying to destroy us going to be scooped up by a race that's going to save us? What if they're working together in an alliance? So this is something to be careful of, and this is what kind of information has come through in learning about what's taken place. So the operations I'm talking about and what Eisenhower set up is different than that. Valiant Thor can't really intervene. He proposed some things to that administration, but he supposedly has about 200 ships, motherships, stationed all around the planet, and he acts as a guide and an advisor. And again, that's what we would do if we went to get help with our mental or emotional health. Are they really going to save us? No, they're a true healer is holding space for us to save ourselves and heal ourselves. Anybody else is just giving us some drug, giving us a diagnosis, telling us what's wrong, and here, take this, it'll all go away. So it's the same sort of template or model that we have to be careful of in these times. Where I feel it is now is, rapid awakening is happening. People are understanding that it's up to us. We need to unify. We need to come together. We need to recognize what's being targeted, how we're being played. And there's always going to be those really freaky news stories, where everything is like, wow, how many months do we have left? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? And right now, that's all they have is power of persuasion, infecting our creative channels, getting us all hyped up, throwing us into survival so that we do not spend the time to anchor and ground our own creative imagination and visions and dreams and get in touch with what our deeper calling is. So we need to look at that as a wake-up call to awaken something within. Like, whoa, it's getting real far. How could they possibly have that much power over an awakening humanity? Well, they don't. So let's awaken and come together. Yes, there's frequency modulations, manipulations coming through the towers, and there's things in our body, that come through the food and what we've inhaled and what people have put in their body because they thought it was the right thing to do. Is that enough to create our demise? We're much more powerful than that. Once we stay in the vibration of love, despite our differences, and we, move into just being more strongly guided by our higher self and our deeper intuition, and we recognize the challenges as we confront them, we begin to open up the doorways within and we access those greater abilities that have been dormant, because we're only functioning at such a low level of DNA potential that we need to look at these challenges as opportunities to open the doorway into aspects of ourselves that can override this, because we're more powerful. We have the greater creative energy that they're afraid of. And that's why they're manipulating us to consent, because they need it for it even to exist, for those false realities to even exist. So if we can do our part, then whatever we're hearing in the news is just going to end up, falling away. It's kind of like if a doctor gives you a diagnosis. If you keep believing it, if you're not working on nutrition or doing the deeper inner work or clearing ancestral patterns, yeah, that is going to manifest. And what your belief in it and your inability to look at the root, yes. So we're seeing the symptomatic news stories of an unawakened humanity. Well, this is what happens when you don't awaken. World wars, nuclear weapons, depopulation, the next wave of manipulation that a lot of people are going to fall for. They're going to think those of us that get it are nuts because they're still in relationship with the captor. They're still defending the captor. It's like seeing a friend in an abusive relationship. You see the red flags, they're not ready to yet, until it hits so close to home and they're tired of the abuse, they're tired of being lied to, and they're realizing that they're getting injured and abused, and there's no denying it anymore. But somehow the human nature is it has to hit rock bottom. You have to it has to hit so close to home. It has to be your child or your parent or yourself for you to begin to just, and then even then you'll make excuses. Oh, well, that was just an anomaly, and eventually everybody's going to reach their breaking point. And once that breaking point happens and you break the mind control, it's amazing the ability of your higher self and spirit to be able to transmute, create miracles, and begin to create a massive healing response. And this is where we can go. Rehabilitation, working with the tools and modalities that help to heal the damage that has been done by the bioweapons, which require the mind control for them to even work. That's why we can be exposed to very, very similar things, but not have the same reaction. We're exposed to the same stuff, but we're not being assimilated into AI because we're neutral. We're not buying into it. We might be angry, we might be distressed because of what we're seeing, but, we're thinking for ourselves. And the mind is the ultimate computer that it puts viruses in so that the rest of the body malfunctions. And then it says, oh yeah, that's some virus that's outside of us. No, it's the mind virus that has gotten in here that is beginning to take down the body. And the frequencies that hold it are what the nano particles are, the heavy metals, right? So once the body overcomes that, we really do turn lead into gold. The body begins to become spiritualized and it removes this stuff with the help of nutrition and things that will help to move it out of the body. So I just feel like we're in a showdown of forces. Regardless of what's going on in the world, we need to take it upon ourselves to write a much better script, to empower that amongst each other, and to just really team up in ways that, are going to be humble and not in the guru, cultish way that we've seen in the past. And we're still seeing. It's not about propping up somebody and having people follow. It's like every single person has something so precious and unique to bring to the table. And if we can harmonize all of that, then we're all switched on and we're all doing our part and doing our role. It just, even the Christ teachings weren't about worship me, you're a lowly sinner. Never. It was about becoming a Christed being. And our divine template holds the hierogamic union of the Christ Sophia, which is that ultimate love story that was being presented to us in that lifetime as a teaching to remind us of that template that exists within. Those are our parents, on a bigger picture level, that we inherited their genetics of that full 12 strand and beyond DNA, but we are born into this encased in a net 3D with false parents that are teaching imbalance, exile of the divine feminine, patriarchy. And then when the feminine rises, it's a funded movement that makes women want to turn into men. And then the next generation, everybody's getting a sex, like wanting to just negate their gender. So yeah, that's going to keep going on, and they're just going to keep throwing the next thing and the next thing, and they're going after our children. They know the adults are awakening, and they're trying to take away the parents' rights. So we're going to have to just pull them out and recreate on our own.
Yeah, that's going to be a rough ride for some. I mean, for many of us that are awake, we've worked through all of these things. As you said, we've done the healing to a certain extent, maybe not fully, but and we've taken the time to research and learn this information. But those that are awakened later, they're going to have a pretty hard time. It's going to be like having to do a master's degree in 1 year, right? But I love the teachings that you sort of prescribe to, which is really for people to take their power back, teaching about the divine blueprint. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's God complex. The era of gurus is over. That's just another God complex that we, creating. So we're not even realizing we're creating the same patterns over and over. So yeah, I love what you're teaching. And obviously, at the moment, there's a lot of infiltration. There's a lot of manipulation going on because this is the final battle for Earth, in a sense, So they're going to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at us. So we've got to really remain very grounded, very centered, very, anchored into our divine human body and our connection with our own higher self to navigate these times, and learn the discernment. We have to learn discernment. We've got to gain sovereignty. We cannot have these saviors that keep coming to save us, because we'll literally never learn and we'll never graduate into the greater galaxy.
Totally, exactly. And that's so interesting about the South Node being Libra, because it plays out on a micro level. Are you in relationships and partnerships that one wants to dominate or control? Are you the silent empath, or vice versa? It doesn't even matter if the masculine's doing it or the feminine's doing it. It's a program, that impacts people in different ways. And we have past lives as well, that might influence, the behaviors in that way. So we're looking at relationship. We're also in a relationship with life. Are we in partnership, a dependency bond with the inverted system? Because that's a false partner. Or are we in partnership with the divine and with natural cosmic laws, with Mother Earth, with spirit? That's the true partnership. And when that partnership is established in your knowingness, because that's who you are and what you're made of, then you build upon that bond. And you recognize the magic and synchronicities. And the thing is, people are afraid to take that leap. They're afraid they won't get that paycheck. They're afraid of what other people will think. They go into that survival mode, which a lot of dark cycles of history have installed into the nervous system, into the cellular memory of famine, of poverty, of war, of the depression, whatever it's been. Instead of, whoa, we're abundant. Wow, we can, like activate these greater abilities and do what yogis do. Well, we're in such dark cycles of history that the planetary body was not in a position for us to be able to receive on that level because of the reversal grid technologies and the inversions. And now with this ascension window period and the corrections of with the Venus transits correcting the ether upright, or the pentagram energy upright by the orbit that it creates, and the 13th sign, the sun moving through the 13th sign, which is ruled by ether, and also Chiron, meaning we have to put our wounds in a vulnerable place so that the unconditional love can pour into it and heal it and purify it. Because with wounds come bad decisions. And then with wounds come also our own guilt and shame and lack of forgiveness for self and others. So, I mean, there's so much to what wounds and traumas do when they're unchecked. So all these corrections are happening, the galactic cores of Andromeda, Milky Way. This is the ultimate relationship. This is what's activating our divine blueprint. So we can reflect upon that. Are we in relationship with that, or with an inverted matrix? Are we in a relationship with a narcissist, an abuser, a control freak? Are we acting that way? And as we stand in the Mars, the Aries, it's a different kind of Mars than, ego, the personality matrix that we've been in, the world of appearances, the world of like, arrogance or insecurity. It's like, what are we healing from here? And in all humility, we can begin to understand, because you know, those that have a lot of false light or a lot of confidence, you know, sometimes have careers that exploit humans and they make a ton of money, or they sell their soul, or, you know, but some make a lot of money and they become a resource. And it's not just all for them. They do something wonderful for the collective. There's nothing wrong with making a lot of money. So it's just like raising the bar on Mars and how we experience Mars, and looking at Chiron as being a catalyst for taking it to the next level. And that's the ether with Chiron and Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, the energy of the mother being anchored back on the planet, who's here to give us unconditional love and nurturing so that we can heal those wounds. And then Mars becomes the gateway. It becomes integrated with the soul. It becomes integrated with the higher dimensions. Then it becomes a vehicle. And as Neptune moves into Aries, Aries being ruled by Mars, Neptune being the multidimensional, now it's the divine human. It's the time on Earth for the divine human, the ego that is not compartmentalized, not allowing our creative imagination to be infected by whatever we're hearing from outside of us and looking outside of us for the solution. But they're going to really, really do all that they can to hijack that. And I really don't feel it's going to be successful, because everybody's calling, there's not everybody, so many people are calling it out. And their only way to shut it up was to censor and just like mask, you know, like, don't breathe in the ether or the mother love, you know, like, we're going to take you down for violating community standards. You and I have both lost channels. It's just like insane. So that's the only way. It's like, okay, now we're at a level where just shut them up, just shut them up. It's like the control freak saying, you need to just sit down and shut up. We don't want to hear it because you're speaking truth.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas before we were the obedient children, whatever daddy, mommy says of society, or we're the rebels. Okay, well, you're outcasts, so you're not allowed back in, and you can just live on the streets or find your way. You know, you've rebelled. You're not following our rules unless you have an awakened, you know, it like, I'm kind of going a little far on all this, but you know what I mean? So now the rebels are the truthers, and the parents of society, our parents that bought into it, are either going to be cracked open by us and be like, wow, or they're already there and they're helping their children from the indoctrination. I mean, it's just like on all sides we're being hit. But the beauty is that by the time next year hits, we're going to be working on body spirit communication. Neptune moving into Aries means that the North Node, being in Pisces, ruled by Neptune, is going to have that anchoring of ego awareness. It's not going to just be a pipe dream. It's not going to be just like, oh, I'm having a mystical experience. It's going to be in the solar plexus. It's going to be a part of, I need to be careful of my thoughts, my intentions, and I need to be in command of my dreams and visions and not doubt them and not allow anything to hijack that in replacement of a horrible script that they will keep throwing us, because they need us to create it for everybody. They can't do it themselves.
Yeah. They're not creative.
I'm sorry if I'm being redundant with the same point, but
no, beautifully said. You know, they are not creative beings. We are. So the only thing they can do is manipulate us to create for them, to create their agenda and to perpetuate their agenda onto the planet. So that's the only power they have. And once we realize that, the gig is up. But as you said, so many people are so attached to their identities, you know, their little lives and their jobs and their careers and their 5 cars and their holidays, and you know, keeping up with the Joneses really, and having the white picket fence, that for them to even fathom another reality is like, no, I can't do it. I'm not ready to let go of all my things, all my toys. And you know, they're going to realize with a shock at some point that all those things are worthless.
It is. Well, they got rewarded along the way. They worked hard for it. That's what they were taught. You know, this is what being successful is. And yes, who doesn't love abundance and living comfortably? But at the same time, like you said, it's material. If that career is meaning that when you're being tested at a time that is saying to you, you need to push this medical tyranny, you need to make them do this. And if you're still going along with it just for the sake of having all those material things, then your soul is no longer developing. You've chosen the material realm. And at the same time, too, there could be a massive fire, you know, like wide geoengineered fire or a natural fire. There could be a tornado. There could be a hurricane. Those things could be taken away from you in a moment's notice. You know, so do you really want to stay attached to something in order to keep something that could be ripped away from you? It'll be ripped away from you when you die. Where's your soul going to go? You know, can you, at least for now, because all divorces are sticky, we're divorcing the false inverted paradigm or the false inverted system. We're dropping our dependency bond with it. But, and I redundantly say this in my latest interviews, but all divorces are sticky, right? You're not automatically going to have your property like divided up, right? Like this is yours, this is mine. It's going to take a little while, right? Because you're not going to end up empty-handed. So don't fear that. You still have skills, you still have talents, and all those skills and talents that were leveraged to be used during this time to exploit humans, you can now take somewhere safe and somewhere that is of integrity, where you can use those skills in a way that is in alignment with your deeper knowing, your intuition, your higher self, and then begin to create a different form of abundance. So take all those gifts and abilities and redirect it. Create your own website. Be a consultant. Be a counselor. You know, show up at events and just be like, you know, maybe work with the medical staff in case, you know, somebody gets injured. There's ways to just move yourself out of it and still do okay. Get an RV for a while, sell your house, you know, and just explore this relationship with true love. Once you're so used to the abuser or the control mechanisms, you barely like know how to give yourself the worthiness to accept true love or believe it's even real. That's why people stay in these negative relationships. They don't think that they're worth more, but they rely on the reward. Oh, I love you. You're beautiful. But like the next day you're going to be abused, right? But you're waiting for, it's like you're in a bad cycle. So it's no different. Everything is micro macro. Our divine template is a replica of the planetary grid network, our DNA. So if that's been put in reversal grids, well, that's what created our junk DNA. And that's why we don't have the ability to access it. But it's really what it is us knowing we deserve more. The true love of creation, the real relationship with Mother Earth and Spirit and Mother Father, that is not these lower, you know, creator beings. And to let go is to realize how loved you are and how supported you are, and following that internal guidance and doing what's right. And you know, I remember when I was living on the road and I was saying no to things. I can't do that. That goes against my greater integrity. And I didn't have anything. And I was like just living out of a vehicle. When my mindset dipped into survival, or I'm just a loser, because that's what my, you know, other people thought, like, or like, wow, I'm screwed. Like, what am I going to do? I only saw things that reinforced it. I only dug myself into that pit because they were belief systems. And the minute I snapped out of it and I was like, everything begins now. I'm abundant. You know, I got my whole life ahead of me. And this is an adventure. Boom, the synchronicity started showing up. I even found money in the grass. One time, $50. I look around to this day. I'm like, is there any money in the ground? No, but when the necessity was there, it was there, right? The right people come forward. But when you're like down in the lower frequencies, that matches like the 5G, that matches the frequencies coming through our phones that want us to stay in that, so that we keep saying, oh, rescue me. Okay, I'll compromise myself just for the money, because I don't want to live like this. But you're allowing yourself to not believe that there's more when you can just trust. And that's the really hard step. And again, you know, I understand it all too well. And so hopefully, yeah, people, you know, listening to folks like us and others that know what that transition is like can feel some level of comfort, because it's not worth it to stay locked in.
Yeah.
But there are people that need to be there in order to create the change from within. You know, like I know a lot of people who are like still showing up for this matrix job, but I know I'm a beacon of light. I know when somebody comes up and grabs a cup of coffee that I have the potential to open up their eyes. And it does happen. You know, like Uber drivers, right? It's like, wow, I just red pilled the Uber driver. And there might be another person that just absolutely walks the other way and says, I can't go there. But, you know, if we can't get out of it, or for any reason, you know, at least don't comply, at least be that beacon of light that you are. And at least, you know, be an advocate for what's right. And if you can't be heard and respected, then it's time to walk away.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, I know I'm going off on these rants, but
no, very well said. I saw a clip today. I've actually watched this before. I wanted to hear your thoughts. Dr. Brian Ardis, and he was talking about, you know, the bioweapon, and that there's actually, I mean, undeniably, there's venom in there. There's literally snake venom in there. And I just got this idea, and, you know, things that I've seen over the last couple of weeks that indicates that this bioweapon definitely kind of aims to disconnect you from that God spark, your soul, in essence, your higher self. Now, mixed with that kind of venom, which is really a reptilian DNA, it's clear what the agenda is, right? They want to turn us into cold-hearted, unemotional, no empathy beings like them, because somebody probably did that to them as well. What are your thoughts on that agenda? I mean, it's still very real for some that had the bioweapon, and some of us have noticed, you know, with friends and family, they become cold, they become even aggressive. There's definitely sort of personality change going on as well. Do you think some of those people will be able to save them, or they kind of lost for good?
Absolutely. I definitely feel that. I know a lot of people that got it, and they really have not changed at all. Their heart has always been big. It still is big. And I feel like when they were starting to really lose it was when they were really defending what they did. That's when they really lost the heart. Was like, I'm right, you're wrong, and you're the bad guy because you're not going along with this. Because deep down, they were really insecure. Like deep down, they knew something wasn't right with that choice. They were confident about it. It's like, oh, well, I made the right choice. You do whatever. You know, these things, these jabs are supposed to protect you from others that might not have gotten it. You know, so why all of a sudden are you re-educating yourself about things that we know about, you know, the jab and how they work? And how back in the past, or at least there was certain times in the past that you had the right to say, I don't want to get my kid jabbed for religious reasons or whatever reasons. And that wasn't frowned down upon. Now it is, because that's been really pushed on people. So, and they've bought into the bait. They really bought into it. And I think their heart not being expanded is because they're in fear of that choice. And they're threatened by anybody who didn't make that choice. Because another thing with human nature is, you know, I don't want to be alone in this decision. And you might have made the right choice and I didn't. And it's just like the constriction, or the, I'm not ready to believe that, or that is like too threatening, can get really, really strong in people. So that would be one reason. And that would also begin to have that DNA infiltrate and take over. You know, because you're not overriding it. We have reptilian part of our brain. We've been exposed to the reptilian agenda. We might have had lifetimes where we were reptilian. You know, it's like there's epigenetics. You know, what genetics are being lit up? Well, it has a lot to do with our beliefs. It has to do with our thought forms. So when you look at a chart, you can see the map of the DNA and the epigenetics of what is lighting up because of the transits and progressions. Well, if we're going to experience the lower level of it in our behavior, it's going to hurt our health, and it's going to light up that genetic coding that might have been damaged, or might be holding an ancestral pattern that can either get worse or better. Or you're either to heal it in this lifetime and clear the ancestral pattern and the DNA dysfunction, or you're going to express it, emulate it, or take it down even further and then pass that on. So whatever we're given, whatever we're exposed to, what are the thought forms connected with it? So there's fear connected with the jab. There's aggression. There's feeling threatened. More divide and conquer. More I'm right, you're wrong. That's lower ego. So I feel that some individuals that realize, well, you know, I might have taken it. It felt like the right thing to do. I respect the fact that my daughter didn't. I'm going to love her just the same. Then I see that they're not having any physical symptoms compared with the ones that are like literally cutting themselves off. You're right, I'm wrong, or vice versa, or whatever. The ones that are maintaining, you know, love and connection, and the ones that aren't judging the ones that got it, it's like the body is a lot stronger and more resilient, you know, because we're exposed to spike proteins, we're exposed to shedding, we're exposed to all this stuff. And I feel it, my husband's felt it, but I'm like, where do I feel it taking me? You know, how do I override that? And I'm, you know, I'm not one to fall into like hatred, so it doesn't take me there. Frustration, just like, yeah, you know, like, oh my God, the world is madness. All right. You know, that's what they want, to exhaust us, to defeat us. Well, I'm not going to go there. That's how we win the war. How can we offset the vibration that is trying to drop us in? Because if we can do that, recognizing that spirit holds dominion over physical matter, and there's parts of our DNA that influence the more physical aspects, and we stay in connection with that, I feel we can transmute anything. And we're going to help those that got the jab transmute it, because we're going to be working with sound healing and frequency. And we're going to work with, you know, community that is like, there's no division here. You know, yes, there might be a bifurcation, but there's no abandonment. There's a bridge between these two bifurcating timelines. And the only thing that's bifurcating are those that say, we can't be friends anymore because you made this decision. And then, you know, that's the ultimate way to split. and even like split things in our own DNA. It's to not be in union, to not be integrating polarity. So I think we have a big task in front of us, and love's going to win, and it's going to be the great alchemizer, and it's going to really help people. There are going to always be casualties. There's a lot of casualties, just being, in the field that we're in. There's no guarantees, but at the end of the day, everything will return to source and return to love, because that is where we came from. This net, this veil, the fences, seals in our DNA, the manipulations that are mostly through frequency to impact the mind, to infect the mind, can be offset. Even the black goo dissolved in the crystalline energy, the aurora hosting energies. That vibration dissolved it, and that's AI. People are like, AI is going to take over. It can be dissolved with the power of spirit, with the power of love. So if we can hold that for our friends and family that have done this, and have the boundaries if they don't accept us, but also have the open arms when they do, knowing that the ultimate antidote is the love, universal love, and what's streaming in, and the vibrational shift that's happening on a planetary level, we totally got this. There's nothing that we're being thrown on a bioweapon level that we don't have within us something to override it. So we're being pushed to the edge to retrieve these treasures and these gifts. And if we don't believe those gifts and abilities are there, yeah, it'll eat us alive.
Yeah, well said. Now, just going back to the exopolitics and your great-grandfather, what do you think he would say today if we were to be able to have a conversation over coffee with you as to where things are currently, where it was when he was there, the work that he tried, or what he tried to do to basically turn the ship around, and where we are today?
Well, I think, he said in his final speech, the warning about the military-industrial complex and being a knowledgeable and aware citizenry. So I think he's really going to applaud all of us that have sought knowledge and awareness, and that we are taking it upon ourselves to bring about the disclosure, to elevate or amplify the ascension energies through speaking about it, through understanding it, through exploring it, through challenging maybe belief systems that don't feel like it, and being a part of this greater conversation. I think that's what that's what Val Thor and him wanted to leave behind, and what they still hold. And a lot of advanced souls and a lot of beings hold for us. A lot of us on a ground level amongst each other, we hold that for each other. It's like, that's what my book's about, awakening the truth frequency, not awakening to my truth frequency, awakening to your own, because in doing that, we all play our own song or our own instrument beautifully, and then we can harmonize and play together. No matter what our differences are, we can learn to work together. And I think what Val Thor really wanted to help us with is realizing what we're up against, how it wants to manipulate us, and what techniques that we can use in order to move beyond it. What the larger picture is connected to Venusian technology, and how there's different planetary energies and different earth levels that we graduate to when we achieve a certain level of awareness within ourselves that break down the mind control and the programs, so it's all within us to begin to understand. If that education was taken from us, what are the droplets, what are the breadcrumbs that were left behind? Be a knowledgeable and aware citizenry. Eisenhower, I think if he was sitting down with me, he would just keep encouraging, don't let this hurt you. Don't take it personally. I know he's always with me and I know he's there, but sometimes I feel like he's not, or like, I'm just like, it's enough. Like I hit my breaking points sometimes, and it's just like, boom. If, I might dream about him, or somebody might say, your great grandfather's trying to, message you, and you're just like all over here. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And just anybody's spirit guides, right? Your own higher self, is no different. It's always going to intervene, and it's just going to remind us, who we truly are, what we're made of. It's not about the governments. Doesn't mean that there aren't beneficial leaders, of course, and we want to support that in the world. But the most important thing is that we understand that there is a collapsing of these power structures, and it's going to take the form of feeling betrayed, feeling angry, recognizing the criminal activity that has happened. But we don't want to go down with the sinking ship. We want to realize that ship is sinking, but one is like rising, and one is like ready to sail off in a much more beautiful future. And we are the vessel, we are the skipper of our own ship, and we, are on this greater, timeline together, side by side. And to not give up, to not lose faith, to not be manipulated, to know who we are, what we're truly made of, and what we're worth. and how that is so it's such a prized possession for these lower beings that lost their connection to source, that like literally all they can do is vampire. And that is definitely a relationship to break. And I think he'd be saddened, just like we all are, when we see what's going on with our children and those that are still being trafficked, and the crimes against humanity that still exist. But to hold faith that we are winning this war, we win the war within, and we are a team, on the ground level with the galactics, with the much, much larger picture, with the cosmic and natural law and the earth energy, which is seated as an ascension planet, to just step into the fullness of all that we are. There's no separation from these, greater beings. There are tricksters. We're moving through that density of astral, where there's a lot of imposters, there's a lot of parasites, there's a lot of, but there's also, that is where we gain self-mastery. And then when we're on the other side, we pierce through the veil, we're helping to encourage others to join. And that we're doing it. We're absolutely doing it. So I think he would be happy to see how far we've come. Very proud of every single one of us that have taken on the challenge, and not to take too much on at the detriment of yourself. Know that you're a frequency, that you're beaming this energy out. We're all frequency, and we override, the dark technologies in being in the higher frequency. This is how we de-weaponize these weapons that rely on our mind to be in connection with it, to generate these false realities. And that they have nothing on us. They absolutely have nothing on us. And when we can just be that vessel and beam that out, we're going to help to dismantle that weaponry in the individuals that we choose to love and respect, no matter what they're doing, no matter where they are on their path. That is like the Christ conscious way to be. And we're going to fall down and we'll have to get back up again. And let's just cut each other a lot of slack. We are dismantling so many programs, so much that has been modeled to us, so much that we're still recovering from in our own childhood and past lives. So let's just, not have the conquer and divide the community that really needs to, show the way. Not, because we're better, we're, not in an arrogant way, or, but in a way that, like, we've done it. I compare it to being an expedition leader. You went through the storms, you got bitten by the snakes. You're used to the terrain. You know what kind of weather might come in, and you're just trying to help those that are like getting a grip on it, for the sense of safety and protection, and to develop the skill set to be able to survive this and thrive. So I always compare it to, I think that's why I went into the wilderness and expedition leadership, because I would end up using that metaphor a lot. You bring people up to speed, but it's really them developing it from within. You can't do it for them, but you can encourage them through love and just like experience. Hey, I've been there, done that. I survived that. Instead of the kind of leadership is I only know, and if you don't follow my narrative and you don't follow everything that I say, then I'm going to ban you and unfriend you. That is not true leadership. That is like steering a false narrative, and it's undermining your own intelligence, and it's not allowing you the experience to find it on your own terms. So, and we have to be careful of that, because that's still very rampant everywhere.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's a free will universe. So we've got to do it ourselves. Like you said, nobody can do it for us. Nobody can force us to do anything. It's up to us. And we got to do the work. We got to walk the walk and, overcome those obstacles ourselves. That's the
Totally. Yeah. And until then, we can help bandage up the wounds for each other, and keep, just like have each other's back. But like be resources of, this is what worked for me, and, we can all be resources, and just look at people beyond their programs, talk to their soul. We amplify what we talk to with each other, and it either triggers a person, they get offended, or, you empower something that they might be stuck in. We got to have more soul to soul communication, and doesn't give those other things any attention, or else we're just arguing. The programs are arguing between each other. The dynamics of how we relate are taking center stage, when the soul is love, and true God source is unconditional love. And that intervenes through us when we are able to be an example of that. It doesn't mean you put up with abuse. It doesn't mean you allow it, but, we can't fall into the hatred. what we cast as an enemy have been trauma-based, mind controlled, and abused, and they're running altars for the most part. The
Exactly.
group that's doing this is so small compared to the ones that are influenced by these, you know, nefarious forces. They're not in possession of themselves. They've been in rituals that connect demons and entities to them. It's like we need an exorcism, and love is, and joy and laughter, you know, is what these demonics hate. So anytime we're in balance and in these lower levels, they're just like, yes, that's what we want to see. So we can't go there.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say traumatized people traumatize other people. And we've got to realize that we can't just take a hateful approach to everyone, because some people honestly are victims themselves. I'm not justifying anybody's behavior, but there are people that are implementing these evil plans on the planet and not even knowing what they're doing, or they themselves are so MK Ultra mind controlled. So we've got to take a much more neutral approach, you know, to this, and realize that this is the time to heal. If we're going to keep on warring and warring and warring, it's just literally never going to stop. The cycle will continue and continue and continue. So we've got to fight this war with something else, and that is love and neutrality and higher consciousness, you know. And yes, there are characters that absolutely have to be removed from the earth plane. But you've also got to realize a lot of people have been mind controlled and traumatized into what they are doing today. As children, it started when they were born into these elite families. They were in those rituals from a young age. They were abused and traumatized and tortured.
Right.
That's what they do to their own children, right?
No, I know. Or they recruit them from talented and gifted and talented schools, classes, or they'll just, like, you know, pick who has advanced abilities. They'll screen you in school. I mean, it's like unbelievable. And that's a lot about also the Chiron in Aries and North Node Mars, looking at that trauma and, you know, understanding the depth of it. And once we do that, we can have more Kathy O'Briens out there. You know, we can have more facilities for people to be able to unwind from it. And I like to say, you know, if you can turn a perfectly benevolent being into an assassin, you know, don't you think you can turn that back into its original soul, or you know, help criminal minds that have been completely bent in the wrong direction to be taken back, instead of just locking them up like an animal? I mean, we have this kind of technology to be able to do that, working with frequency or activating parts of the brain that will be like reasonable, empathic, compassionate. So, you know, if they can turn somebody into a criminal, they can certainly turn a traumatized, criminally minded person perhaps into a better person. But yes, people, there definitely needs to be a removal of rehabilitation for the ones too far gone. I mean, it's a process. And at the same time, you know, we're multidimensional. There's different, is a 3D always going to exist for the souls that need to come in and graduate from it? Or are we healing it all and it's all going to be changed forever on this particular timeline? Could be both. So, because what we're seeing is the healing of ourselves, and the earth responds to us. So as we dismantle the programming, we're going to move into an earth that isn't impacted by geoengineering, that her weather is not being controlled because we're not being controlled. You know, we're not going to notice because we are avatars, we're elementals that have command over, not like command in the way that God does, but we can steer weather. We can, you know, be a part of the natural world and forces, you know, that sustain us, that take care of us, that we work with, that we're in communication with, like animals, you know, like we have that, we experience that. But I think when we dismantle it all within ourselves, we move into an earth that shows us what that looks like. But until then, a lot of us have agreements to witness this one because we're trying to pull out as many as possible. And I think there's a lot of cosmic EMTs here that are like down on the ground level, going into the house that's on fire, you know, trying to pull out as many as possible. And then, you know, those are all mysteries, though. It's just kind of, it could be. And in a lot of ways it is. I mean, and we can change our agreements at any time too, you know, I think. So a lot of the darker beings, when they see us awakening and they know they can't get away with it anymore, we're at a period where they are being pushed into a corner. Are you going to stop now? You know, because now you're being held accountable and you have a choice. They might be convinced by their handlers, you know, or continually yanked back in to be reprogrammed and controlled. A lot of whistleblowers don't realize they're still under control. They're still being reprogrammed. A lot of them carry altars that look like a benevolent leader in these times, even for the awakening. And I've worked with people that have said that and called those altars out and said they had to wake up from even the altars that people were like in the awakened community, like, yes, they're on our side. And then they would go back and be reprogrammed. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to look at, but it's possible. It's possible with greater understanding. And in doing that as well, those that have been blackmailed and those that have sold their soul too, you know, it's like you don't have to be stuck there. We don't have to cast you the enemy. Everybody, you know, has a choice to turn the other way, and this is the time to do it, because if they don't, there's not a very long window for that self-correction before they would, like you said, be taken off or be cycled back into source and exterminated, really. And this is what the Guardians have talked about through folks like Lisa Renee. So, you know, there is that timeline that does show that, but there's the ability to also experience where it's still alive and well. But I think we're witness to a completely different sort of shift where we don't have to repeat this. We don't have to come back in and experience this in the same way. We're not being recycled back into this, right? We're literally moving on into a realm where this has all been rectified. This has all been healed. This has all been resolved. It doesn't exist here. But sure, it's going to exist somewhere else. But, you know, we are a part of experiencing this from within, that we're going to experiencing it in a different dimensional level, that we survived those galactic wars, those exploded planets, Lemuria, Atlantis, the inverted timelines, the showdown of forces with New World Order and the Great Awakening. And you know, we're going to have those memories, right? So you know, it's going to be a completely different experience, instead of like, oh, we're just going to reincarnate back into this again. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, this is it.
For some of us, yeah, I hope. I'm hoping I'm not going to come back.
Nope, we came here to change the game forever. Well, hopefully forever, and be part of this big shift. You know, many of us came here for this, and what a time to be alive! What an incredible time to be alive. Laura, I don't know how much time you have. Maybe we can address this now or in another interview. But I wanted to ask your great-grandfather how we met Valiant Thor, for those that perhaps don't understand how the story unfolded in the very beginning. I don't know if you have time.
Wait, to explain who Val Thor is?
No, how Eisenhower and Val Thor got introduced.
How they got introduced, well, I mean, 1957.
When they met each other, or how they met each other.
I believe 1957. Val Thor was around before that. He might have made contact with Eisenhower before that, because it was, I think, in 1951 or right after 1952 with the unconditional surrender agreement that Val started to advise. He warned about the Greys and the Nordics, because the Nordics were a part of the Draco Alliance. Not all Nordics, of course. Not all reptilians are negative. But we don't hear about that from Val. We hear about first contact with the Nordics. Val Thor was not a Nordic. He's from Venus. And there was a non-intervention agreement. That's why this supposed first contact more than likely did not happen. There's a lot of representatives saying that it did happen, and they always seem very, very angry and not benevolent, and they're always blaming Eisenhower. So I'm like, okay, at first I'm like, wow, okay, gotta accept that. I'm here for truth. But then when I hear about this, it makes a lot more sense that Val warned about the Nordics and warned about the Greys. He had to go rogue, though, and got immunities because of his connection with the Guardians, because we needed this warning, you know? And so all these false narratives, all this cover-up, has been really, really hard to get access to. And Dan Cooper, the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance, has immunities, and he was able to tell me all this stuff. And a lot of people in this community are like, well, I never heard that before. It can't be real. And I'm like, well, it's not an accident I'm in this family. There's a lot about why I was recruited to go to Mars, my relationship with Eisenhower before this lifetime. So in Eisenhower's administration, supposedly I was one that warned Eisenhower as well, along with Val, and that I had an agreement to come in so that I could begin to expose this and run into the people that could help expose this, and also the alternative 3 Mars thing. So I think, there was something beyond this lifetime in connection with Eisenhower and Val, and he was a person to be in the position that he was because a lot of the benevolent star beings, and there aren't many that actually were able to create communication, said that he was the only one that would listen, the only world leader that would listen. And so when they formed an alliance, Val Thor helped to connect him with the Guardians. And Dan believes that it was before Val Thor that he set up Ike's Force, and that is the USMC Special Section, and that helps to turn the secret super soldier programs into something benevolent, and to offset the Dark Alliance, Dark Fleet with their super soldier programs with a benevolent one, so that we would be able to keep the MJ-12 in check as far as what they were starting to do in space on planets, colonizing Mars, for example. So it gets really complicated. So Val comes in and he starts to advise Eisenhower, influence his final speech, help him to set up the Earth Alliance, the White Hats, and petition to the Guardians. And the Guardians are like beyond form. They're like the most advanced beings. So that connects with the founder races. It connects with the cosmic trinity. And when people talk about this prophesized window period of ascension, I feel because we have to go through all the steps and initiations on a ground level for it to happen, that was the beginning of our ability to create ascension on this earth, which almost got completely hijacked. And even some of the quotes say that Eisenhower petitioned to the Guardians saying, Earth beings are worth saving. Like you said, there have been exploded planets. There have been dark nefarious forces that kept certain planets from being as advanced as they could have been. That could have happened to this Earth. So with the help of Val, and I'm sure it wasn't just Eisenhower, but throughout maybe other cycles of history and in the here and now, with how that's been passed down through different presidents, and how they almost got assassinated. And one did, Kennedy, when he was briefed, after he was briefed for, reasons that there are too many to list, even Reagan, right? Then this overtaking of the three-letter organizations of groomed Manchurian candidate type presidents ended up happening. And then people feel that there's a connection between, the T guy. I don't know about censorship. It's probably too late because of everything we
I'm going to put this on.
Okay, like with Trump and the Eisenhower and the White Hats, and that there's a connection there, and why he's a very different leader than what we've seen. So I don't want to speak my opinion about that. I can only hope for the best. But so Val, I feel they're still together. Like they became good friends, and Val promised Eisenhower that he would look out for his descendants. And so he's sent messages through other people, and I get, remote viewer information and my own intuition, helping me to understand these things, and my connection as well, and why, I came into this family for these reasons. But they're definitely aligned, and there's definitely maybe a link to Eisenhower's time on Venus with Val Thor, and like how this all came about. But, remote viewers have said you initiated the warning of Eisenhower, and Val Thor followed what you did. I'm like, maybe, like, there's no way I can easily say that and take any claim at all. Like, it's enough for me to wrap my head around most things. So yeah, okay, perhaps I'll know when I move on and I have like the direct experience myself. I'm very wary about what comes through other people, and I'm way too humble and way too like skeptical to accept such a thing. But I do feel an affinity and a knowingness that I did help warn, because that has come up in multiple readings. And so I just look at it like a family, and there's different soul groups and soul families that just have agreements, and this was just one small family amongst many families of star seeds, of representatives of higher systems that are here on Earth working together. And ultimately we're all a family, and we just we pick our different roles, and we make our agreements, and we do the best we can with them.
Yeah, and you've done a hell of a job, I must say, and sacrificed quite a lot in your career. It's not been easy, and you've been attacked, and you just come back every time stronger and more determined. So
I hope so. Well, thank you so much for all that you do, and for just having me on, and for your support. And it's just, I really appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you're doing absolutely amazing work, Laura, as I said, and I'm sure you've been instrumental in activating a lot of people over the years. So thank you for your service and what, as I said, what a magnificent time to be alive. And it will be interesting to see how all our roles unfold as, you know, things move on and we're manifesting this new earth, hopefully.
For sure. Well, much love to you, Nina. I look forward to doing this again sometime and just
Yeah,
staying.
we'd love to do another one. Thank you so much, Laura. Much love to you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.